my last boss actually at some point, she was like, I feel like you're just like Benjamin Button. Like, and I was like, actually, I felt like even more what she was like getting at was, I was like, I think she means like a Forrest Gump where you're just like, why? Because she was like, everything I mentioned, you're like, oh, well, once when I was like living and working in Greece, or like, oh, once when I was in the music industry. And she's just like, why have you like tried so many things? I was like, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Well, let's start. Let's start with that.
Praise and production.
Gumbolaya podcast. We're totally talking out. I forgot to do the starting things. We're doing the starting things right now. I don't know how to actually lock in an intro, so I just kind of start and yell. I just say a bunch of words, Gumbolaya podcast, and then we're doing it.
That is like every podcaster and YouTuber.
Is it?
Seen.
Okay.
Yeah, very on trend.
Well, cause like I guess my unofficial mentor is Joe Rogan, and I know this is a very controversial person. A lot of people got feelings, but I very much identify with why he does that. Like, it's something for him to talk to people he finds interesting. It's a way for him to talk about topics that he finds fascinating. And it's a way for him to talk to his homies and BS and laugh and play whatever. So he doesn't go through a lot of the branding things, and I like it. But he was also doing very well beforehand, so he didn't need to. So.
But I mean, hey, anything you can like take or learn from a mentor perspective of how he's doing what he's doing, and then apply it to your stuff. Obviously, the way that he's built what he's built, the way he has his conversations, you know, it's working. Whether you like him or not.
It's working in some level. It's definitely incredibly successful. It's just I also identify with his, I guess, peace with the fact that not everybody's going to like what you have to say. Not everybody is open to opinions that differ from their own. And it's interesting to see how aggressive people come after him when someone is on the show and they say, here's what I think. What? That's your opinion? Or you're a professional and you're educated in this? And you don't think what I think you should think? I don't know. So
I guess my thought with it is, it's tough because I feel like it's amazing to get every opinion heard. And then it's sort of like, if you are the captain of that ship, how do you engage with that opinion?
Yeah.
And like, what's the difference between platforming something that could be total misinformation and just letting it be said, or bringing it on, but challenging. Like I was just listening to this interview with Jimmy Kimmel and on Dak Shepard's podcast, and they were asking him if he would have Trump on. And he was saying he would like to, but he's like, I wouldn't be nice to him. Like we'd get into it, but yes, like I'd love to have him on because I think we could get to parts of the conversation that would be helpful and interesting for people to hear. But, you know, the criticism around when I remember Fallon had Trump on, I was just like shaking his toupee and, you know, what do you do when a different opinion comes on your show? And so like with a Joe Rogan, it's if he does bring someone on to dive into something, but let's say there's a ton of just false information being said, is he clarifying that at any point? Is like something that I like, you know, and I think this is a challenge for them too, but on Dak Shepard and Monica Padman's Armchair, it's like Armchair Expert podcast, is they do a fact check at the end where they go back to the interview.
That's cool.
And they just fact check everything. So you can listen and, you know, it just makes sure that...
You think that matters to most people? To me, that's interesting to see someone say, we looked into this, this is what we found. Because, I mean, a fact is just kind of something that's agreed upon by a group of people that whoever is accepting this as a fact has agreed, has some type of authority. Because you can get facts that oppose each other, and to the people that think this is the fact, that's the fact. And for people that think this is the fact, same thing. And they're complete opposite, you know, perspectives or something, or, you know, they both can be concrete. But for me, I like that. Do you think most people care about facts?
I don't think they do, but I think as someone in the media, I think it's not the only question we should be asking ourselves isn't only will people like or want this. Sometimes you have to know what your service is.
Right.
And so I think it's dangerous. And I cared about this at BuzzFeed, and it's hard to do. But I think you have an obligation.
Because it doesn't sell as well.
Yeah. And I guess coming from like a social science background, I do believe some things can be proven as true or false by science. Not lots of things can't be, but some things can. Like, or when something was founded, or like whether a certain world event happened. Like some of these things are actually just not up for debate. And so I think whether people think they to be clear, I think above all, I'm a storyteller. And so I'm very aware that the story is the part that matters. That's what I don't every day listen to 5 different news podcasts. It's just not fun for me. I'd rather listen to like these wide-ranging podcast conversation interviews than like also BBC, also NPR, also like I don't want to either. But then I just think when you have a platform, you go, what's my responsibility to make sure anything that is a fact is acknowledged? Or if someone's sitting there saying something, at BuzzFeed, we had a research team. We just like ran stuff through them to make sure we weren't saying things that then millions of people were going to watch that it turns out is like confusing for them.
Because that's very interesting to me. What did it feel like to be at BuzzFeed with that resource available in-house? Did it feel like the company environment and philosophy was that this is a mandatory step in the process? Was it optional? Was it discouraged? Were they like fact checking so that they could say they were fact checking? And I want to caveat by saying, I understand if you don't want to touch some stuff because I'm asking you about a company that's, pretty powerful and yada, yada, yada. So if you don't want to go there, no problem. I'm just kind of curious what it felt like.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as long as I was there, BuzzFeed also had a whole news department that won a Pulitzer and took facts and research very seriously. So I think even though we weren't on the news team, it was a company-wide value of, that I think as soon as you start reaching millions of people, I think everyone, I think Joe Rogan has a perspective of this. No one just goes, I don't know. Like, it's like you have to have an opinion about how factual does this need to be. And I think, in any creative space, there's always going to be tension between speed and creativity and facts. Like even the big sort of piece that just came out about Hassan Minhaj and his show, and some people on the research team were saying like he didn't let us be in every room till the end. Like it's he apparently was like, well, it needs to be funny, and at some point we need to say thank you for the research. Now let's make it's hard. Like it's definitely hard. So I think we experienced that at BuzzFeed, but I think just like we're saying, there's some things that there are facts and other things that there's a lot of opinions, and so the research team never needed to watch everything, listen to everything. Like it wasn't there to micromanage, and nobody asked for that. So I thought it actually operated really beautifully, because when we were talking about facts, we had a team to go to who, like, these people were experts in research. They had degrees in how to research things. They just make sure, and we'd still get it wrong. Like I remember one of my producers did a great piece early in COVID, very early. I think we're trying to find hand sanitizer, but as a way to sort of start talking about just what was happening. At the time, we had a UCLA professor on as an expert who said, don't worry about masks. Masks don't help anything. That was truly what the science was at that moment. It was really hard when a couple weeks later, all of a sudden it's like masks are the most important coveted thing. Like it doesn't mean you're going to get it right all the time. Like that, the science, I think Fauci said this a lot in interviews he did later about how complicated it was to have his job during COVID. He was like, sometimes the science changes and society needs, like we're scientists, so they need to let us say, this is what it used to say. Now it says this, like do this. And so I feel like the research team made me feel really good, because there were also sometimes it allowed us to push further because we knew that we'd done the research. So in some ways, when you don't have that safety net, like people could see that as almost like a policing force, as something restrictive creatively. But on the other end, you're able to figure out what that line is, because you go, no, we did the research. So like we stand by it. So if someone wants to sue us, if some fans want to, there were times when I remember there was a video that came out about a K-pop sex ring, and the K-pop fans were like really upset about it and doing death threats. And the reality, it sucked to get that kind of feedback from the audience, but we knew that research was airtight. So we're like, come at us. Like, this is a really disappointing story, but someone needs to tell it. And so I come from a social science background, but to me, there's a lot of freedom in figuring out what the facts are, because then you can like push things as far as you can. Like, even in psychology, you do a study, there'd be a finding, and then you could change how the world operates based on that finding.
That kind of relates to what I was talking to you about before, you know, where I had a distinct shift in my personal journey on that path, where because I have a desire to learn and grow as a person, to learn and grow as a part of a community and a part of society, I naively assumed for a lot of my younger years that was a general desire among people, that they want to know the truth about whatever is on the table. And if you can present them with some truth or some facts that oppose what they thought, they would be happy to hear it. Because me, if I'm thinking that A plus B equals C, and then someone explains not all the time because blah, 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 that's interesting to me. I am better now. I have learned more about the world, and there is no way to learn everything. So I'm grateful to have a little bit more perspective, a little bit more understanding about what's happening outside of my head. You know, I appreciated that. But
it sounds like you were also raised in a home and an environment where if you learned something that changed your mind, nobody was yelling at you, telling you were wrong, you were dumb. How could you have thought that? Like, it was like, oh, you.
I was also raised in a home where people would admit when they were wrong.
Huge and big deal. Super rare.
Big deal to have your parents come to you and say, I was wrong about that. And fortunately for me, I can't right now even think of any occasion where my parents were mean or cruel or hurtful in any way. So the apology was never, you know, my behavior was because of blank. It was just more so I was wrong about that. And that was it. And we would talk about it. I remember something as simple as, so my dad was raised very traditional in terms of Christianity. And so for him, the appropriate attire for church is suit and tie. It's a very big deal. You know what I mean? It is inappropriate for him. You know, when he was raised, it was inappropriate to go to church less than suit and tie. And right, you want to be appropriate because we're talking about God, you know. So as I got older, you know, and this is probably middle school, high school, probably more so middle school, high school. Anyways, I remember there were these dress shirts that they were like dress t-shirts, kind of. And it wasn't a suit and tie, but you know, you'd wear a suit and you'd have a nice shirt up underneath it that had no collar. You know, it was a thing, and I liked the look. And so you know, my mom took me out. We got some stuff, and I was starting to wear it. And you know, my dad would often have comments about it, and we would talk about it. And eventually, we did the table. Like we wanted to talk about it like all the way out because he wasn't cool with it. And we talked about it for a while. And what was interesting for me is that was one of the only times where my mom and dad argued from different sides of a matter in front of me. They didn't do that a lot. If there was an issue, they would be like, hang on. And they would go talk and they would decide on what to present to me in terms of exposing me to whatever part of life we were trying to talk about. That was one of the only times where they were disagreeing. And it was, you know, it was all pleasant and civil and respectful and all that. But my mom kept saying, you know, this is what young men are wearing right now. It is appropriate. It's just different. Dad didn't like it. And I remember, and he let it go. He's just like, I don't think that's appropriate. You know, I'll tell you straight.
I was wondering who won that battle. So,
what wasn't a winner. And that is another aspect of what was normal for me, I never felt like someone won an argument or lost. So for me, a tough conversation was just complicated. It wasn't combative. And as I got, particularly when I got married, I had to learn that my willingness to continue something until there is what I feel like is resolution often felt like badgering to particularly to Kelly or whatever. And also similar to what I'm trying to explain about like my removal from social media conversation, because the desire to learn a fact or to understand the validity in an opposite perspective just wasn't shared as much. But so a couple of months later, I don't even know if it might have been a couple of weeks. I was going somewhere with my dad, and we saw, a grown man in one of those kind of shirts. He had a nice suit or whatever, looking good. And my dad saw it, and I saw him see it. Yeah. And he turned and looked at me, and he said, Anthony is my government name. CA is the LA name or whatever. So he turned to me, he said, I've been thinking a lot about that. And he was like, and I see the man over there, and that's how I was raised. So I thought that was a difference between right and wrong. He was like, but I think I'm wrong about that. I'm starting to think that maybe that's just something that's changed, and I'm just not, I don't, connect with that. I mean, I'm wording it how I understood him. He's a military guy, so he would have been short, sweet, and to the point, you know what I mean? But I remember really appreciating the fact that he admitted that he has had a change of heart and a change of understanding.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he apologized for kind of, I guess, being insistent on something, but he wasn't mean or anything. He was just like, you need to put those. Sometimes he would insist. But it wasn't much at all. It was really just that's what he thought. And feeling, I guess, that release of control from my dad on a matter that wasn't important, but was important to him, it kind of loosened up my need to do the same thing, to try and assert my perspective as being the right one. Well, fast forward to social media days, I'm much more drawn to Facebook because it's more conversational. You know what I mean? There's only so many things you can take pictures of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's cool. So I was and still am on Facebook a lot more than anything else. And I remember talking to several people in sequence because I would just get so frustrated in conversation online, and several things happened. One thing that happened was there's a young lady who I was friends with, and she's a special friend to me. And in the South, there was an argument between white Southerners who saw memorials and statues and things like that of Civil War military folk or whatever as a positive thing, and obviously the everybody else saw them as very negative. It's like, this person did horrible things to people that look like me and my family. I would not like to drive down the street and see that. You know what I mean? So it's a very complicated conversation because, again, it is a fact that this is hurtful for me to see a mass murderer in my city as though this is where I live. And to my knowledge, we don't live in a time where that's okay anymore, right? So, and then it's like, well, no, these are heroes for us. This is our culture. This is our heritage. This is a great leader. And, even within that group of people, there were people that didn't agree and condone what their fight was about or what they were fighting for. But for whatever reason, they still felt like this is still a great person, right? So that was an ongoing conversation. In some kind of way, it was heightened in the news all of a sudden. And my school was having a lot of conversations about this. You know, I went to an art school. So it was a bunch of artists and drama people, right? A lot of passion in those conversations, right? Yeah. And also, there's a lot of teachers, a lot of faculty, active and retired faculty and staff. All these people talking about a very controversial matter. Well, me and someone that was my friend had some back and forth. And long story short, I don't want to get too detailed, but long story short, that person ended up blocking me. And the crux was this person trying to tell me that I shouldn't be respectful or considerate of one of the elders that was defending the memorials and statues. My perspective was this person is one of our elders. They're one of our teachers. Even if we disagree, we should be respectful, show dignity, and show honor to the fact that they are an elder. And there's certain lines we shouldn't cross as we discuss the matter. And this young person who's white female felt like I was not being a positive participant in my culture's perspective. And I'm like, I think I'm pretty clear on the perspective of a Black person. Like, I get it. I get it. I live it.
Yeah.
But I still don't think it's okay to disrespect our teachers. I just don't. Person blocked me. And instead, that was many moons ago. It still sticks with me because I'm like, we couldn't talk about a conversation that we weren't even having without cutting each other off in life. Like, we were cool. We would laugh and talk and joke about stuff. And, you know, we talked a lot about a lot of the things that this person was going through in life that, you know, nothing to do. We were friends. And all of a sudden we have a disagreement and we can't talk no more. Like, so the fact,
an extra level that it just happens to be someone telling you how you should be interpreting your own lived experience is pretty intense. Like, I'm like, if anybody was blocking anybody, I feel like it would have been more valid for you to block her.
I'm saying, and that was, I still obviously have a lot of unresolved thoughts about that because I don't understand how someone can get so far into their own position on a matter that it would trump these things that to me feel like facts, like telling a Black person how to feel about Black issues. Like,
it's not on the table.
Well, at least I think this, you think that. We can do that.
Yeah.
Because you're a smart person. I honestly believe, I might actually get a whole lot of flack for this, but I believe an intelligent person can understand anything up to a certain point. That point is different for every matter and every individual, right? You know what I mean? The complicated pieces that have gone together to make you are particular. Same for me. But there's a certain point where we are not in culture yet. We're just in humanity. And you understand what it feels like to be sad or to be offended or to be afraid or to be scared, like, or whatever, you know, you understand up to a certain point. So we can have the human conversation, even though our cultural differences are the conversation. So the reason I asked about the facts is because I bowed out. I don't enjoy it I don't even try as much anymore because I just had so many experiences where the amount of intensity in a counter argument wasn't, I think differently. It was, you shouldn't be voicing your opinion. And I'm like, well, then what are we doing? If I shouldn't talk, why did you post this? Why didn't you post it and turn off your commenting?
Right.
You can do that.
Of course, yeah.
Why are you welcoming?
You're asking for a conversation.
Come on, man. I come here and I'm like, hey, Jess, let's talk about dating. And you're like, dating sucks. And I'm like, why would you say that?
Yeah.
Well,
or like, why would you ask me about it? It's like, well, I said I was going to ask you. Or like, I think as soon as you do something like write a book about something, you have to be willing to talk about it. Like if you put something on Facebook, you have to be willing to engage in that way.
I'm thinking that's what you like. I'm thinking that's the point.
Yeah.
I put this up because I'm saying, hey, everybody, I want to talk about this. Or at least I want to share that this is what's happening with me, at least. And if you don't care to hear, anything back, you turn off the commenting or you just don't look. Mm-hmm. But when do we get to you shouldn't talk about what you want? It's weird.
I mean, especially, again, someone telling you how to interpret your own lived experience is a real flex.
Yeah.
And this person better be some sort of lifelong expert on whatever you're talking, I feel like you're also allowed at any point to just say, oh, what I've learned about this person through this prolonged debate makes me just less excited to have them in my life. That's also different.
Yeah.
But blocking someone mid discussion or debate is it's so aggressive, and it implies some sort of personal offense. And I can't help but wonder, obviously I'm only hearing your part, but what did you say that was so offensive to her? And I just don't really buy.
That's the part that's hard for me to let
block. You should block.
That's the hard part for me to let go, because again, I'm not naive to my own faults, but I am unaware until we have the conversation where someone says, this is what you said that upset me, or this is how you said what you said that affected me, right? Even if we don't get to why this was triggering, because I'm in that phase now where I've gone through what for me was severe emotional trauma, and I've had to go through the process of learning the difference between reality versus feeling. And that wasn't a new concept, but when the feeling becomes reality, when it's that intense, learning how to be objective with your severe emotion is hard, just like you were saying, in the previous segment, is very difficult. So all that to say, after all this time, I feel stupid that it even is still on my mind, because every now and then I think about it. But the truth is, because I miss her. I miss my friend. She's funny. She's hilarious.
Yeah.
But I also had to remind myself of many things. Number one, I don't know exactly what it was about that matter that crossed the line. So I shouldn't assume. Secondly, I don't know if the way I was having that conversation might have been communicated in a way that was significantly different than my intention. And I'm always looking for the conversation to clear up conflict. But the I guess departure from follow through in socializing is a very normal and accepted and even encouraged part of the social experience now because of that feature in technology. So, if we go back to, colony and community, sustainable communities where people kind of depended on the community, whatever, the idea or ability to live as though someone doesn't exist was almost impossible. Proximity, interaction, family and friends interaction. You would see people. So, obviously people can hold grudges, whatever, but it was a lot harder to be at odds with someone that's in your community and that's around. So when the option became available to restrict someone else's input into whatever it is, I think it supercharged an immature aspect of our, grand social maturity, because a little kid will do that because they don't know how important it is to resolve a matter. People still do exist, but right now we can act like someone doesn't exist. And then when we have to engage, it's the most traumatic thing on earth ever, because we've practiced, I control what happens in my life. And to some degree that's true, but all we control is what we say and what we do. We can't control the incoming aspect of that.
Sure.
So, it just, I don't know if my memory of the situation is excluding some very important things that I could have been a whole 100% jerk. I don't know. And so I am still kind of in the mentality of that's an example for me of reality doesn't matter a lot, especially in social media conversations. What matters more so is someone asserting how they feel or what they think, and they want acknowledgement and affirmation for only their part, only their contribution. So when it comes to dating, I see that changing as well, but I only hear it through other people's stories because I stopped dating before it was digitized heavily. So when you did the book, were dating apps and stuff a normal thing yet?
Not the apps.
Okay.
Or maybe Tinder was just starting.
Yeah.
But it was thought of as just a hookup app. And then people were on the site, so eHarmony, Match.com, OkCupid, but we're very quiet about it.
Yeah.
And it didn't yet feel like how most people were meeting in the way that now it feels like. Yeah. That's the more common story when you ask some couple, how'd you guys meet? And they go on Hinge. Like it wasn't at that point yet.
So the bigger takeaways that I've been, interested to talk to people about is how different the process of getting to know someone is. And it's a very stark difference because, we're shopping for people now. And I haven't done it, so I don't know the non-sensational part of the process, because what I hear are actually, you got any like crazy, have you ever done any dating app stuff? I've
only matched with people, but I've never met up with, I've never even actually like written anyone back after we've matched.
But it's kind of fun for me to kind of hear the crazy stuff, because I mean, just it's one of those things that the truth is stranger than fiction, or whatever the expression is. So when I was in college, I had a lot of friends that were significantly younger than me, and for them, it's normal. They were in or coming to the age where they had autonomy in their dating because we're in college, right? So they don't have to. Most of them didn't have to ask for permission who they were hanging out with. That's the whole thing about college. You have this newfound sense of autonomy and freedom before you've kind of learned how to manage that autonomy, right? In an environment that encourages sensational behavior. Like, you know what I mean? Do what you want, YOLO, whatever, right? So I'm hearing all these stories about, the dynamic between, one side and the other side when it comes to dating, as they're learning. And, I'm trying to offer as much wisdom as I can, but they're talking about a world I have no, first person experience with. And so it was another example of feeling the advantage of my age, but also the disconnect that was already happening. Because I never felt like an elder that significantly, but in college, because I was in my early 30s, I think. I'm in college because I'm talking to 20-year-olds, I can't remember, probably somewhere around early to mid 30s. I'm talking to teenagers and early 20-year-olds, and a lot of the stuff that they were struggling with, I'm just, I remember feeling like you're struggling with this because you're still not okay with you being who you are. You're trying to adapt and trying to find a strategy to be yourself or to convince somebody of who you are. That was a lot of it. And then also, I'm like, you're also trying to make sense out of behavior coming from an idiot. Like, you're dealing with another 19-year-old person.
Who knows anything at that age? I mean, even if I think about...
No disrespect to the teens. I'm just saying.
No, it's a beautiful thing. I think part of what's unfortunate is when we try to shame young people, not that you're doing this, but shame them for not
knowing
having all that locked yet. Like I said, like anyone under 30 who can like communicate through tough emotions. Yeah. That's wild to me. How could you have learned that already? And I think even like you've been mentioning how I had a lot of weird jobs or career pivots. And part of that was because I was trying to figure out who I was. I was like, maybe I'm an archaeologist in a tent in Greece. okay, that was awesome, but not quite. Like maybe I'm like in the music industry and like running around New York City and like, and thank goodness nobody, and this was also just part of growing up the way I did, nobody was pressuring me to really figure that out quickly. If they had, I would have made the wrong call. I would have rebelled against it. Like, I think it's really great that people are also pairing up later in life now, just because like if everyone married who they met at 19, like how would that go? You know? So I'm also just like, it's going to be messy. Like when I was hearing your story about your friend and the blocking too, part of what I was thinking is, you know, right now we are in sort of a moment of culture too, where people want to minimize any discomfort. Like they just want to be happy and having fun 24 hours a day. And there's a level of privilege with that. We're not in the middle of a war. Like, you know, there's just ways to think, oh, maybe I could be happy just all the time. And, you know, I think if you like engage in therapy or do work on yourself, you realize that there's a practice of sitting in discomfort. Like it can't always be solved. You can't always rush through it. Sometimes you just sit in it and you go, this isn't going to last forever. And and like,
I think it's harder now. You know, I think it's harder now because there are so many options to distract us from that necessary process. Whereas, you know, I don't know where the line would be drawn, but before now, there were so many aspects of life that were challenging and difficult, and that wasn't seen as a negative. It was just hard. It was just tough. You know what I mean? There were certain aspects of maybe parenting or career or whatever that this is supposed to be tough because it's important. And there was a reverence for things like that. You know what I mean?
And because every time you got through something, I mean, it's so cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. Every time you got through something and it didn't crush you, your self-esteem goes up, your belief in yourself. You just go, oh, I thought, like, whether it's a breakup or someone ghosting you or someone being bad to date, or whether it's, you know, jobs and careers that don't pan out, whether it's like physical safety concern, like there's just so much that we're all sitting in, and there's a kind of core belief in yourself that happens when you just get through hard stuff. And if you're trying to avoid hard stuff all the time, it means somewhere in your brain you think everything will crush you. And so you're then like approaching life just with the goal of avoiding anything that might hurt versus going after things that, totally might hurt. But like, I don't think, you know, having done my graduate school program in, you know, positive psychology, human thriving, none of the findings are avoid discomfort, avoid risk, like avoid negative feelings. Like that's a life of coasting maybe, but also those are people who tend to, it comes out in other ways. You know, as I was reading The Body Keeps the Score, that book on trauma that came out. And even if you think you are avoiding whatever you're avoiding, like it's going to come out some other way. You're going to be like, why do I have this autoimmune disease? And it's like, because you're avoiding all the things that you're trying to avoid. And so I think you're right that we have, even just in the moment, if we feel a second of boredom, we can grab our phones and alleviate that boredom. And if we're in, you know, like, yes, like dating at 19 will be messy, and like you will deal with idiots, and you will also be an idiot sometimes. And like, you need all that, like that we need to do it. And there's no problem with like going through that at that age. Like, I don't know how anybody gets to be any sort of like fully realized person with any belief in themselves without messing up like a million times. Well, so I think it's a bummer. Like your friend, even in that friendship, she like couldn't sit in the feeling of discomfort of like, wow, we really believe different things on this. Like, this is a little tense. That discomfort happened and she blocked you. Like, and that's one thing. If you're like a random person on Twitter, like you don't need to invite discomfort in, but you were friends.
I thought like
it wasn't even worth a conversation. Like, I think that's to, you know, and like that again circles back to everything we've been saying with communication. Like you, even if she'd said, here's where we're at now, like, here's how I'm feeling. And like, I hope this might really hurt you. I hope it doesn't. But like, I just don't want to continue this friendship because this has been my experience of this. And then she blocked you. That would really hurt, but you'd understand why, what happened.
People don't do that.
No, they don't. And I don't, you know, there's some things like, should someone do that after 2 dates? No, I don't think, like, I don't know that everything deserves a long drawn out thought, but a friendship or like something where there's a real connection that's been made, just like say the hard thing to people.
Well, you make a good, exactly. Well, that's what I was talking about regarding, I believe her is either Megan or Michelle Phelps Roper or something like that. That's why you should look up her TED Talk. Like, to me, that really sums up, or at least the point that I'm trying to make. But I thought it was a very good offering of how to get through conflict with people in a way that is positive and prosperous for yourself, and so you avoid being offensive or attacking or hurtful outwardly. You know what I mean?
I love that. And so I imagine too, like, I really want to listen to it. And I think about also learning how to do that so that you're not just repeating generational patterns. Like, it's none of our fault that we don't know how to do this. I think even in my parents were incredible, but my extended family very much has the tradition of one fight can turn into people not speaking for decades, or like they will die and never have spoken again. Maybe it's just like an old Italian thing, but like the grudges, the not speaking, and half the time people don't even know what they said or did, or like the idea is that confrontation is terrifying, and there also were things like physical abuse, emotional abuse. So conflict is terrifying. So you just do everything you can to avoid it. And if you get into it, you shut down or you run. You have to like learn how, I think even for me, it was, and for my parents and then for me, realizing that you can have the tension of conflict. It doesn't mean that relationship's going to get cut off for you. It doesn't mean you hate each other. It also doesn't mean you have to like carry that for a really long time. Like part of what I've learned in other types of relationships is like, you can like have a moment of tension. It's in a lot of like relationship therapy, it's like repair or rupture and repair. So like you're never going to be married for decades or even have close friendships or siblings for a long time if you can't figure out sometimes you will rupture. You have to learn how to repair and you just know that's going to happen. But I think I just say that even in my family's longer term extended history, there was no repair. So rupture was terrifying. So you just avoided it at all costs. But so it's it's okay that all of us are figuring, or hopefully it feels like your friend was not on this journey. Hopefully she is now somewhere, but you're on the journey. I'm on the journey of how do we disagree with people in like the way that is like important for a healthy, full life and not just
rupture and repair. That's good stuff. Let's stay on that. Quick cut. Continuing on, Jessica Massa, C.A. Purcell, Gumbolaya podcast.
If it's my time, then it's my time. Worry about yours, 'cause I got mine. 'Cause I got mine. Worry about yours, 'cause I got mine. 'Cause I got mine. Praise and production.